Hi guys, welcome back. So let's get into England's report card for the autumn internationals 2021, and also let's pick a 15 that I think may well be their best 15 for starting the Six Nations in 2022. So let's have a look at the results. Played 3, won 3. So obviously that's a good result. Against Tonga, 69-3. Tonga weren't very good at all. Quite a weakened Tonga team with hardly any time together, but still, a big score is a big score. Probably Australia was the most impressive performance, where they dominated the match, were pretty comfortable really, 32-15. And then that game we've just had against South Africa, a bit of a thrilling end, where England were under the pump in the second half, but came good just to pip it, but had a really good first half, which gave them a good half-time lead. So one of the big positives for England was the fact they got to blood so many youngsters that looked good enough to go through to the World Cup. Marcus Smith, Freddie Stewart, two obvious names there who have looked really good. Hopefully they'll get more and more starts and more experience under their belt. A guy that I really like the look of, Adam Radwan, didn't get quite as much game time as I'd hoped. Certainly his game isn't all round yet, but neither was Johnny Mays when he started. So I really hope he comes back in the Six Nations and gets more game time, and they let him make a few mistakes and learn. Similar with Rafi Quirk, a youngster coming in there, looks like he's got all the ability in the world, but needs some more game time. Maybe it's time for Ben Young's to take a bit more of a backseat and let these youngsters develop. Bevan Rhodes, Jamie Blamire, we saw in the front row trying to deal with the power of South Africa, doing pretty well. They both need some time to develop as well. Then we've got Alex Donbrandt, who did get a decent amount of game time, but not the starts we were after. Probably needs to adapt to international rugby, be a bit more physical, but the talent's certainly there. And then some players who aren't necessarily young, who I think really we saw come to the fore. Johnny Hill in the second row, much needed, big performances for him, just using his physicality, being a nuisance, keeping it simple but effective. Then we got to see Joe Marchant at 13 and see the talent he can bring, so I really hope he stays as well. Now another big positive for England is their attacking intent. They've really showed some good tries in this autumn international series. Marcus Smith being the key, I believe, and if he's not there, I think we really need Ford at 10 pulling the strings if you're going to get some continuity in that attack. And of course, the big positive was 3 wins from 3 gives good morale for this young group going into the Six Nations. Questions, negatives if you like, well, I think second row wise we're pretty thin on the ground. We had Charlie Ewels, who's a solid club player, coming on when South Africa had the likes of Mostert coming on, not quite the same. We need to blood some more. Maybe Ribbons, maybe Martin coming in. We're starting to hemorrhage a bit of talent in England now as well. Joel Kapoku, I've just read today, has been lured abroad. So we need to start blooding some of these youngsters in the second row. In the centres, well, Tuolangi got injured again. Many of you guys always comment that I really shouldn't stick with Tuolangi in my selections because he's always going to get injured, and well, you've proved to be right again. So maybe he's just an extra if he's fit, and we shouldn't really plan around him, to be honest. Maybe they should bring in young Kelly from Leicester. That could be a way to go. Maybe Atkinson, who knows. And the pack, let's talk about the pack who did well, but is this a pack that's going to dominate? I mean, they were still very much second best against South Africa, although many teams are. Curry at 8 just seems a bit of a stopgap. I think he played really well, to be honest, but he'd be much better at 7, and you bring in a Donbrandt or a Tom Willis into 8, a specialist big 8 into 8. I think that would be so much better. Sam Simmons looked decent, but I think his role could well be that super sub role that covers 6, 7 and 8, which could be really, really useful so you can play around with who you have on the bench. And are England really going to be truly dominant? Even if they wheel out their best pack, maybe their game plan should be more around the attack instead of just dominating up front. It would certainly be an exciting thing to see. Okay, I'm going to pick a best 15 that I think could start in the Six Nations next year. Farrell looks like he's going to be injured. I'm also not putting Tuolangi in there because I've kind of lost my faith in his abilities to stay fit, but he may be around. So here's the front row. I think Genge should be the loose head. It's close with him and Marler, but I think Genge has got the all-round game. He's a bit younger, more dynamic. Give him some more game time. He's part of that leadership team now as well. So I think that makes sense. Certainly Marler's there. As a backup, we've got Rod, who needs more experience. Will Mako Vunipola come back into it? We'll see. We'll see what his form's like over Christmas. Cowan-Dickie, I think, is still your starting hooker. Obviously, George has done all right. Blameyer's come in and done well. But I think Cowan-Dickie is still the man. And Alfie Barbary is probably back fit very soon. Probably someone I think you need to start drip feeding in. Get him into that international setup so he can have something to focus on, because he's a real talent as well. But hopefully he'll stay fit for Wasps. Tight head probably is a slightly weak area. Sinclair looked okay and he still is England's first choice, but behind him, pickings are a little thin. Stewart's done okay. Maybe we need to have a look at Joe Hayes again. Let me know if there's any tight heads that you think could step up. Second row's an easy first choice pick. Atoje, Johnny Hill. Great. But who's behind him? Like I just mentioned, that's a bit of a question. I would like to see George Martin step up to second row as long as he's physically ready to do so. But I also think Martin could also do a good job at 6. But for now, I think Laws has that 6 jersey. He's performed really well for England at blindside and leading by example. But Curry could fill in at 6. Like I said, George Martin. Ted Hill's a name I've bandied about, but a few guys have said maybe he's not ready yet either. But yeah, chuck me a few more names you think could play 6. At 7, I'd absolutely start Tom Curry. It's his best position. He's a great player. Underhill's obviously decent as well, as is Ludlam. And a certain Jack Willis may well be fit soon over the new year. So let's have a look to see how he comes back, although that could be a bit of a longer road back. At 8, I'd give Donbrandt the start. He's got the talent. He needs to get used to this international game. Tom Willis is another guy I'd think should be in and around. Simmons, of course, like I mentioned, probably floating in around 8, 6, 7 and 8, to be honest. At 9, let's start Quirk. Give him the shirt along with Smith at half-back. Let them form a partnership. You've still got Youngs if you need him. But another guy I'd definitely bring in for the Six Nations is Van Poortvliet of Leicester. Looks like an all-round game, really impressive player. Then you've got Mitchell and Randall as well. So it could well be time just to phase Youngs out, who's been amazing for England, but he just struggles a little bit when games are high tempo. At 10, absolutely Smith all the way. Backing him up, I think George Ford has to be the man. There's not really anyone else really pushing for that 10 shirt at the moment in England, so I think those two and maybe Farrell's when he's fit again are the 3 for the moment. Centres is an issue. We don't really have a big centre who's tearing it up. Tuolangi, keeps getting injured. So maybe Kelly and Atkinson as the backups, but we'll play Slade and Marchant, I think, and have just a super skillful back line. On one wing, I'd definitely have Radwan, a serious pace man, very dangerous. Just get him in there, see what he can do, get him the experience. 15, I think absolutely is Stewart with Malins to back him up. Now, the other wing spot is up for grabs. I'm putting Malins in there because his all-round game is amazing. His skills are excellent. Maybe not the pace of some others like May. Daly's going to be back in the mix, but I'd go with that for now. And you could always switch up where you bring Stewart in, hitting the line hard as the only big back, if you like. Malins can always cover 15 whilst he's doing that. It's not ideal, but I think it's probably the way to go. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think of England's autumn internationals and my lineup potentially for the Six Nations, and I'll catch you next time.